Hello, welcome to our Training Tuesdays. Today's topic is tips and tricks for eOne SmartConnect, and specifically for users already using eOne SmartConnect. Though if you are new to eOne SmartConnect, I'm sure there's going to be some great tips and tricks. With me on the line today is Laura Muse. Laura is one of our technical consultants at Endeavour, and as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, SmartConnect has been evolving and growing over the last, what do you think, Laura, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Connecting to just about everything. Heritage came from GP, so we know that all works out really well. And they've also expanded to Nav, Business Central, and connecting all of the Dynamics 365 platform applications into GP, as well as Salesforce.com, which we've done for a number of clients. And with the open API web applications, just about any cloud application can be mapped and connected. Laura, anything else to say before I make you presenter?
No, that all sounds great.
Great. Making you presenter. Great, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you, Scott. For today's demo purposes, I will be working with the newest on-premise version, which is SmartConnect 2018. And if you're on an older version of SmartConnect, the look and feel might be a little bit different, but all the features should be there. But if you are interested in upgrading, then you can reach out to one of us and we can assist your team, or we can perform the upgrade for you. Okay, so SmartConnect is a great integration tool that we often use for clients with GP, Dynamics 365 CRM, and Business Central. But like Scott mentioned, there is so many potential data connections that you can make, whether it's Salesforce, ODBC, any of your databases, and web services, which is great because it can connect to almost all current cloud apps. So SmartConnect has a lot of potential and it's a really great tool set. So in SmartConnect, we have the concept of Maps, where a map is an integration that is made up of a data source and destination. So when we first open up the SmartConnect application, we land on the following map screen. And the screen has a grid with one row per map. So we can see that in the sample environment that I've built, we have about probably 20 integration maps. And we have a few different data that we can look at to try to get information from our maps. So we have the map ID, which is going to be the name for the map, and then the description, which gives some details. In here, we try to provide as much detail as possible so that we know what the map is really doing. Then we have the option to have a group. So we can specify different integration groups. You could do GP versus CRM, lots of different options, however you want to group it. But in this situation, I don't have any groups set up. We also have the data source and the destination, where for our data sources, we can see we have CRM queries, and we also have an ODBC connection, which is connected to our SQL server for the GP database. And then we also have GP and CRM as the destination. So as you can see from this, the integrations that I have to play with today are all going back and forth between GP and CRM. Next, we have the last run date and the run number. So what this tells you is pretty much when it has last run and how many times it has run in total. And then we have the owner column. So by default, when you create a map, this is going to be set to whichever user created it, but you can change it at any point. So if maybe you have some sales maps and some purchasing maps and you have different users that interacts with them, then you can set up the owners for those maps so that it lines up with the proper user that you need. So it can just be a way that you can group and filter down to find what maps you're interested in. And the owner, it doesn't really give any special abilities. The only thing is that if you're set up as an owner for a map, then you can't be removed as a user from SmartConnect. So that's just one little gotcha to have for that. And then the last column is just whether or not it's scheduled. So you can see here that there are 3 maps that are currently scheduled. The rest of them, if you want to run them, then you're going to be doing it manually. Okay, so now we have an understanding of what data we're seeing here. So let's take a look at some of these maps. So let's just pick one randomly, and you have a few different options for opening it. You can either double click it, or you can select the map and click the open button that is up here. So once it's open, you can just fill in all the details. The main sections are going to be your data source and the destination. And you just click it and it'll open it and collapse the sections as you need. So this is where either our team or your technical team would be able to build out these integrations. So that's how you open it. And then if you wanted to create it, there's a button up here, and that's just going to open a blank version of the screen we just looked at so that you can populate it with all the information that you need. Okay, so if you've worked with SmartConnect before, you're probably familiar with this screen, but there's a few different cool things that you can do with the screen that you might not be familiar with. So for example, you can sort on different columns. Right now you can see the black arrow for the destination, so that shows that we're sorting on destination. If I click it again, it'll sort in the opposite direction. So this can be a good way if you're trying to find specific details. For example, I could go to the last run date. So if I want to see what's run most recently, then I can click on this, and then I see that the unit of measure map is the one that's run most recently, today at 11 a.m. So we have some sorting options. We can also rearrange the layout here. So the group one, I'm not that interested in it. So I can actually click it and drag it and drop it over to whatever section I want. And I'm basically just looking for where those two white arrows are pointing up and down. And then I just drop it and I'll put it in that place. So I have a lot of options to kind of play around with this layout here. And another thing is, if you have a lot of maps, then you might have to scroll, and even by sorting, it might span across multiple pages, and it might be difficult to see the data that you're really interested in. So another thing we can do is we can group the maps into different subsets. So let's say we have multiple destinations, and we want to really filter down on just the ones that are in GP. So I can take the destination column, drag it up to here, where it says drag column header here to group by that column, and then you can see that we have the two different subsets. So if I had multiple destinations, they would all show up here, but I only have the two, so that's what's showing. And then I can just click on the GP section, and now I'm only looking at the maps that have a destination set to GP. So that's a really great option to filter down if you have a lot of maps, and if it starts becoming a lot of noise, that gives you a lot of potential to really drill in on the specific map that you're looking for. So let's say we've done our grouping, but that was just a one-time thing. You just really wanted to find that map. And now you want to see everything back to the way it was. Well, you can just right-click anywhere in this grid. And then there's a reset grid to default. So you'll just click on that. And now you see all the maps that you have in the original layout that was given. So now that that is reset, we can look at a few other options. So one thing that does pop up quite a lot is that someone will try to run a map and it'll say that it's currently being edited by another user. So for example, if I go to this map, I could either open it and then click run, or I can just come up to the top and click run map. So I'll try to do that, and you'll see that this error message pops up. It's telling me that it's edited by another user, but I don't really have the potential to see who it is or edit it in any way. So I'll just click OK there. And when this happens, what you're going to want to do is come up to this activity button. And this will unlock SmartConnect Maps that are locked by users. So I'll click on that, and then I can see that there is a lock happening. The Laura user has a lock on this map, and it's in the map setup. That's the lock type. So that tells me that they have the map open, so it's either being edited or they're just looking at it. And I can see that the lock has been in place since 9:53. So since I'm logged in as Laura Muse right now, and I know that I don't have that map open, I know that this is a stale record, so probably my computer crashed, something happened, and it kept the lock on the map, but I no longer have it open and I'm no longer using it. So in this case, it's safe to delete it. So to delete this record and to remove the lock, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. And then I select the minus button up here. So I'll click on that, and it says, are you sure you would like to delete this record? And I'll click yes. So now I can refresh if I want, and I can see that now there's no locks on the map. One thing I would add here is that in that case, I knew it was safe to remove it because I was the user showing up. However, if you have a different user that is showing up, then you're going to want to talk to them and see if they currently have it open. Because if they do have the map open and if they're editing it, then you don't want to lock them and kick them out because then they're going to lose any of the work that they've been working on. So it's a great way to see who has it open. And then you can kind of take it from there and arrange your schedules so that you're in when they're out, or you can boot them out if they're done with it. So that's a great option there for if you have multiple users and if there's a lock on a map. So now I want to look at the management console. And to do that, if you come up to this map tab, and then it has this ribbon across here. Right now we're in the map screen, which shows all the maps. Instead, we want to come over to the management console. So we'll click on that. And the management console is a dashboard that allows us to monitor the progress of your integration maps and any other key details. So it's got a few different report blocks that are showing. The first one is the recent logins. And this tracks when all users connect to the SmartConnect application. So in this case, where it is a test environment, the only user that's showing up is myself. So in your environment, you'll probably have multiple users. You can see the time that they connected. So we can see the date and time of various connections that I've made. And this can be interesting if you're looking to see when people are connecting, or if there was an outage around a certain time, you can just kind of track what's been going on with the application. And then we have the pending scheduled maps. And this is going to show all of our maps that are scheduled to run in the near future. So I can see that I have the map names there. I can see when they're going to run. So this one will be at 11:20, and this one will be at 11:30. And then I can see whether or not it was successful on the last run. So I can see that the U of M was successful, but the shipping method one right above it, that one had failed. So this is a really great quick glance that you can use. If for some reason, let's say you have an integration that's pushing customers into GP and you haven't seen them in GP for a while. So then you can come in here and look in here, and maybe you don't have the schedule set up, or maybe it has been running, but the next run date isn't until maybe in 3 days time, at which point you know you need to update your schedule so that it runs more frequently. Or if you look over here and you see that the last run was a failure, then maybe there's an error in that integration and you're going to have to fix it before you can actually get the data to come across. So the next section that we have here is the schedule servers. And this is going to be the servers with Windows Service installed. So typically we only see one, because usually we only need one schedule service. However, depending on your environment, if you have a lot of different production environments or whatever the case may be, you may see multiple servers here. Next, down below, we have the recent process errors. And this is rarely used. If you turn on a setting for logging data on failures, then you hold all previous data loads that failed, so that you can, at a later point, you can try to run them again and try to see if you can get a different result. But usually we don't see clients turning this on. It can overwhelm your system because it is recording a lot of data. And typically if it failed once, it's going to fail the next time you run it as well. So normally we don't hold on to that data. Also, if you have a continuous integration, it's probably going to send the exact same data the next time it runs. But if you have that set up, then you would see them down here, and then you would be able to click on process errors. And then what that would do is it would let you rerun the previous data for a map failure. And then the main section that we have, the main report, is the recent map runs. And this has some information on the last map runs. It also comes with a nice little graph down below, so you can just visually easily see how many successes and failures you've had. So I can see that I have had more successes than failures, but there's still quite a lot of failures. So we're going to want to troubleshoot that. And up here in the maps grid, it gives a lot of information similar to what we had on the map screen. However, on the map screen, we see one row per map, whereas in this grid, we see one row per map run. So for example, we see 3 of the GP address BK maps all here. And that's because it was run 3 times back to back. And then some additional columns that it has at the end is the run number and the status. So I can see that this was the 10th time that this map has run and it was successful. And then it was the 11th time that it ran successfully and the 12th time that it ran successfully, where these numbers are specific for that map. So in this case, this unit of measure map, it ran for the 78th time here versus this one was only the 12th. So that's some information that you can kind of play around with. And now that we kind of have an understanding of the data for the different reports, let's look at how we can rearrange this layout so that it's more ideal for whatever our environment is versus the default. So one of the first things that you can do is you can come over and hover onto the side, and then when you see the arrow, you can drag it and resize it. So this is good because this had some scrolling that was happening. So right now I've got it expanded out so I can see all of my information without having to scroll anywhere. Another thing that we can do is we can click on one of the report blocks and drag it to move it around. So it is a little bit awkward at first to try to move it around. You have to hover it on top of a block, and then this icon will appear. And this, you have to hover over one of the sections to show where you want to put it. So if it's here, then it's going to replace that block, or I can put it to the left, the top, the right, or the bottom. And another thing here is it does show the dark blue rectangle that shows where it's going to be dropped. So that is a good identifier because otherwise it can be a little bit awkward trying to figure that out. And another option that we have for us is that we can actually remove report blocks entirely. The recent map runs is the main one, so we actually can't remove that one. But all the other ones, we have the potential to remove them. So for the schedule servers, we had already talked about how that one, in this case, I really just have the one. So I'm going to remove that one. So I'll just hit the X, which will close it. And same with down here, since we don't have the recent process errors, it's not enabled currently for any of the maps. So I'm just going to hit the X and close out of that. And as you play around with this, if at any point you want to bring something back and you realize that it actually was important, up here there's a view button. So I can click on that, and there's little check marks by the different report blocks. And it's going to have the 4 of them. It doesn't have the recent map runs because that one is always showing. But the other 4, you have the option to bring them back. So if I realize that the schedule servers I actually do need to show, I can click on that and it'll pop back up. And then I can either exit or I can click it again and the checkbox will be removed and it'll remove it from my view. And we have a few other options here. We can reset to the default. So similar to on the map screen, this is just going to bring us back to the screen we started with. Or we can set the current view as the default. So that means anytime that I connect, this is what I'm going to see. And anytime I make changes to it, if I say reset to default, I will then see this layout that I've selected. So we have a few options there. And I will also add that anytime you exit the SmartConnect application and reopen it, it always goes back to the default. So sometimes if you know that you love the screen, it can be nice to set this current view as the default so that you always come back to this. Okay, so we have a few other options. Right now, we're only seeing a few records here, but it would be better to see more records over time. So if we go into the settings, we can play around with the amount of data we see. So we can expand and restrict it. So I'll click on that, and we have a few options. We can set the number of records we want to see, as well as how far back in time we want to see. So right now it's going back to July 26th, so that's about a month of data. So if I was only interested in the last few days, I could change this to be more recent. But in this case, I really just want to see more records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this so that it shows the last 1,000 records, and I'll click OK. So we'll see that after I do that, my recent map run section has expanded. So I have a lot more records showing to me. And then the graph down below has also updated. So I see that over time, if I go back for a lot more records, I do have a lot more failures than I do successes. So that's something that I'll probably want to troubleshoot a bit further. Okay, so now that we have more data in here, we can do a lot of the similar stuff that we did on the map screen. So we can rearrange columns if we like, and we can also do some sorting options by clicking on the columns. But now we're really getting into that moment of there being a lot of maps and a lot of scrolling. So in this situation, we're probably going to want to filter on our data. And to do that, whenever you hover on any of the columns, this little white filter icon is going to appear. So I have a lot of failures. So if I'm interested in seeing those specifically, I can click on that. And then I can specify that I want to see the failed record. And then I'll click on close. And it's a little bit smaller now, but there's still a lot of failures. So if I want to filter this down even further, I can go to the last run date and I can filter on that and say, show me stuff from today. So now I'm only looking at the failures that have happened today. So it's a lot smaller, it's easier to see, but I still get the full data set. Whereas when I was only looking at the last 10 records, if there's been more than 10 map runs that have happened today, then I wouldn't have seen that information. So now that I have this information, if at any point you want to remove a filter that you have in place, then you can see the little white icons that show up for any of the columns that you have the filters on. So I'll just look for those columns and I'll click it, and then there's either a clear filter option or you can just uncheck it, and that will basically just remove the filter that we have in place. So for now, I'll just leave all of the data and I'll sort by the last run date going down so that I have the most recent maps at the top. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the management console and how we can use this to really drill in on our data, as well as the map screen, now let's take a look at troubleshooting some of the map failures that we have going on here. Okay, so one of the first options that we have is that we can look at the map logs. And this is something that we will have to enable for our maps. But for now, let's come up here and there's this button called Map Logs. So we can click on that and we can find a map that we're interested in. So the one that I see right away is the price level, which has failed, and it actually shows up quite a lot in this list. So let's drill in on that to see what's going on. So I can specify the run number. In this case, I'm going to look for the highest run number because that's the one that is run most recently. But you can also go by the start date if you're not sure what the run number should be. So if I look at the most recent one, I can see that it was unsuccessful. And I have a few other details, like I know that there was 72 records that were sent across, 54 were successful, but 18 failed. So I can expand this out and take a look, and it's got a lot of useful information. I get the key details, and I also get the error message here. And so if I look at this, I can read it and see that this is an error message from CRM. So if you're not familiar with CRM, this might look a bit confusing to you, and that's okay because you wouldn't have to deal with an error message like this. But basically it's saying that it's finding an issue with the lookup column to the currency. So it's passing an ISO currency code of NZD. However, the transaction currency ID is null, so it's not able to find it in CRM. So for these, sometimes the error messages can be confusing. So if you're looking at this and you're really stuck, this is a great opportunity to take a screenshot. Grab the map name, grab when it ran, grab the error message, and then you can either send this off to your technical team or you can send it to us where we can look into it further and really troubleshoot what the issue is that's going on. But when I look at this, I see that the issue is that there's a currency missing in CRM. So I know exactly what to do. And if I did want to look at some of the previous map runs, because this is only looking at the most recent one, there is a previous and next button. So I can go back in time and I can see some of the previous ones. And I can see that for a while, this has been the error message. So now I know what I need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that map screen that we started with. And the issue is that the currency is missing in CRM. And we already have a map for that. So I'm actually going to open this up and run this. And this will send our currencies across into CRM. And I will notice that in this case, this map is not scheduled. So probably what happened is we sent the currencies across to CRM, and then we haven't been updating it. So some have been entered into GP after this map was created. So now the price level is not able to update properly. So if we come over here, we see that those currencies are all updated. So then we can go to our price level one. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Price level, because that's our scheduled one we were looking at. And now if we run this, we'll just kick that off and let it run. So as that's running, I did mention that we have to enable it. So in order to enable map logs, you're going to open the map that you're interested in, and you'll come to the Options tab. And when you're over here, there's a block here that says Use Log, and you're going to want to specify to log the errors. You can also log the successes if you want. This is where you can log the error source data, which I mentioned previously if you're going to save all of the data for all of your failures. And then you can also log XML information for your integrations. But in this case, I really just want to see the error messages because that's what I'm going to want to troubleshoot. So you can specify to use log errors, and just save it. And then you'll be able to access that information from the map logs. But I will mention that if you enable that, then any user who has access to SmartConnect can then access those logs. So it really depends on your security measures and your preferences around that. But it can be a really great tool set. Now I can see that I had 72 successes. So now the price level map is running successfully. So I'll just go back to the management console. And now I can see that we had currency map ran successfully. And we also had the price level run successfully. But one thing that we'll also notice is that while price level ran successfully, over here, it's still showing a failure. And the reason for that is because this is only showing the scheduled map, and this was a manual run. So for this one to update, it's going to have to kick off the schedule. So at 11:40, when this map runs as scheduled, then it shouldn't have any issues, and it should have a check mark after that point. So if you're wondering why you ran a map and it was successful, but you're not seeing an update here, that is probably why if you ran it directly. Okay, so another thing that we can look at for troubleshooting any map failures is to just rerun the map and see if any error messages pop up. And this can be really good if you do have security concerns, so you don't want to enable the map logs for all of the maps and have every user in SmartConnect able to see it. Then what you can do is, let's find this one. Yeah, so this one failed. So if we want to run it, we can either double click it like we did on the previous one, or we can just come up to this button. So I'll click Run Map, and I'll specify the one that I want, which was that, and I'll select Run Map. Are you sure you would like to run this map at this time? Yes. And then it will kick it off, and we'll see as it runs, the blue bar goes across, which shows as the data is going to the destination system, and it gives some information here. So we did have a screen earlier. I just kind of went by it quickly at that time. There was other stuff I wanted to discuss, but what it's telling us here is similar information to what we had in the map log. So we can see that we had 97 records that were sent across, one of which failed, and 96 of which succeeded. So there's really only one instance that failed. And we also got some information about the map runs. We can see that it went from 11:26:56 to 11:27, and it only took 4 seconds. So now down below in this grid, we get any error information. So in this case, we only had the one record that failed. So we only have one line. But if we had multiple errors, then we would have one line per error message in this grid below. And to see the error message, we can either hover on this line, but that can be a bit awkward. So you can also double click on it. And this will open up a nice box that will pop up, and it gives all the information on it. So again, this is a really great opportunity to take a screenshot of this, and you can send it to your technical team or to our team, and it's really helpful for trying to troubleshoot what the issue is and what needs to be corrected. So we can see here, this is what a GP error message would look like. So we got some error details up top, and then we get a little sample of the data down below. So in this case, what you're going to look for is where it says error description, and then the bit that's after the equal sign is going to give the information. So in this case, the primary address code is required when other address information is filled in. And so if I look at the data here, I can see that it's our customer A Datum Corporation, but the address code is blank, and that is a required field in GP. So now I know what the issue is. So I can click OK, and we have a few different options. So right now, I know what the issue is, so I could go into CRM and update it so that the next time that this map runs, it'll send over the data correctly. Or there's a button here called Fix, and I'll click on that, and this gives me a few other options. So now it's showing me all of the data so that it's not in that XML format. I can just read it. It just makes things a lot more simple. And at this point, I can either save it to a file, at which point I can send that file to someone so that they can look into it and see what the issue is with the data. or I can make edits directly in this grid. So in this case, we know that the issue is with the address code, and I know that the address name is what is sent from CRM to the GP address code. So I'm going to look for the column that is address name, and I can actually edit this. So I'll add a value in, and in this case, I'll just populate it with test. And now if I want to run this with the changes that I've made, I'll just click run all. And then, are you sure you'd like to run this? Yes. And now it's just going to run that one record that failed. And we're going to be able to see that it went across successfully this time. So now our data has all been sent to GP properly. So that is great. This is most ideal in a situation where you have a one-time load. So if you have Excel data that you're trying to bring into your GP or CRM situation, then you can just update it there, and you don't have to worry about fiddling with the file and then sending it through your whole integration process again. You can just update it in this map, and it'll send the proper data across to GP or CRM. And another thing to keep in mind, though, is if this is a continuous integration that happens over time, which in this case it is, it's going from CRM into GP, and it's consistently doing it, then you're going to want to go back to your source system and update the data. Otherwise, the next time that this map runs, it is going to result in the exact same error because it still has the blank address code in the CRM system. So anytime it tries to send that to GP again, it's going to be sending that blank, and it's going to have the error message. So just one thing to be careful of is you want to make sure that if you are doing that to do any fixes, that you want to update the source system as well. Okay, so those were two really great options for troubleshooting maps. But as you might have seen with a few of the different maps that we've looked at, sometimes the error messages can be a little bit difficult to try to figure out what is going on. And you can take screenshots and send it to people to look into, but there is one last option that we can look at, and that is changing the destination type on our integration. So now I'm going to look at the GP address one, and if I open that up, I know from previous experience by looking at this one that it is sending addresses from CRM to GP, and it's complaining that the shipping method is missing. But I can see when I go into CRM that the shipping method is populated. So there's some issue that's happening here, and I'm just not getting the visibility to it. So what I can do is I can come down to my destination, and right now it's set to GP. But both GP and CRM have a really great option where you can say send it to a file, so either GP file or CRM file. In this case, I'll select a GP file. And what this will do is it's going to take the data in the format that it is at the final step right before it sends it to GP, and it's going to put it in an XML file so that I can then go through it and see what the data is. So the one other thing that we'll have to do before running this is we have to set the path. So in this case, I'll just set it for my desktop, and I'll click OK. And then we'll just say run. Are you sure you want to run it? Yes. And this will show the address information that we're trying to send across. Okay, so we had our success. It's saved to the desktop. So we'll just open that up. And now we can see it was complaining about the shipping method. And we can see from down here that, yeah, it's sending a shipping method of 1. It's not actually sending the name. And this is actually a very CRM specific situation where they have the friendly names and then they actually have the numbers, which is what's saved in the database. So in this case, default value is mapped to the number 1. So what it's sending across to GP is the value 1 when we really want that default value to come across. So now that we know what the issue is, we can make some changes to the map, because previously, anytime you looked at it, we saw that the data looked exactly the way it should. So now we can update it so that we get the proper data. So what we're going to do is we'll come back to our SmartConnect. We'll open that exact same map up. And there's an option in CRM. It's not really important for today, but it just changes it so that it sends the label. So it's sending the friendly names across. And what exactly the error message is isn't really as important for today. It's really just getting that file so that you can look through that. And then from there, it can really help you figure out what the issue is. And again, if you're not clear after you've generated the file, then you can always send that to either someone at our team or your own team, and they can troubleshoot this further. So now that we've made that change, we can see that yes, the shipping method, it is coming across with default value, which is now something that will be accepted by GP. So at this point, it's very important, since it's still set to the GP file. We know that the data all looks okay now, but we need to make sure that we actually send it to GP. So we're going to change it from the GP file to GP. And now when we run it, it's actually going to send that data into our GP application. And we should get a success from this. And now everything is all happy. So we can hit done and exit out of that. So the one thing with that is I do recommend that if you are changing the destination to be the CRM file or GP file, is that afterwards come back to your map screen, look over here, filter down on your destinations, and just make sure that everything is reset so that it's looking at either GP or CRM. Because if it continues to send to that file, then you're just going to keep generating that file over time, and it's never going to send the data to the actual system. So while it's a really great troubleshooting mechanism, you really want to make sure that you change it afterwards so that you are getting your data sent properly. So those are the main tips that I had for today. So just to review, when you open SmartConnect, you get this map screen, which is really great for kind of drilling in. You can filter it and rearrange it however you want. You can set up the layout that you want. You also have the activity monitor, which is a great spot to see if there's any users that have locks on the maps, or if the scheduling service currently has a map locked. And you can also remove the lock by clicking the minus sign. So that allows you to clear any locks so that you can open maps and run them. And then we also have the management console, which is a really great dashboard, which has multiple report blocks that you can kind of play around with. You can change the layout as you like. You can see more or less data. And it's got this cool little graph that gives you an idea of how many failures and successes you've had. And then for troubleshooting any map failures, some really great options is to go into the map logs if you've enabled it for the map, so that you can drill in on what the error messages were, or just select that map, rerun it, and then you can see the error message. And if it's something that you can fix easily, you can hit that fix button and then make any changes to it, save it to a file if you want, or you can click run all and resend that data set. And the last one was you can change that destination type to be a file, which is going to generate a file so you can see that data before it is exported out. And you can make any changes that you need to it, and you need to make sure to change it back to the destination type that you had it at initially before trying to run that integration again. So I hope you learned something new today that will help with your own SmartConnect application. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass it back to Scott.
Thanks so much, Laura. That was fantastic. I'm always amazed with such a wealth of knowledge, and thanks for sharing those tips and tricks on today's Training Tuesday. For those that are new to Endeavour, we're now in our 32nd year, back from 1989. 3 lines of business: advisory services, implementations, and ongoing optimization and support. Support for GP, as well as Dynamics Nav and Business Central, and Dynamics 365 CRM. We deal with all the cloud products and are Gold Cloud certified, as well as certifications for all of our ERP and CRM teams. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reply to this webinar invite or reach out to Trish, James, or Steve, and they'll be able to help you point you in the right direction, either for new projects or other new initiatives. And of course, you do have the Endeavour support desk to assist you on day-to-day actions. So with that said, thanks very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.